Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, the entire internet has gone bonkers since yesterday, since the UFO hearing in Mexico, where Jaime Maussan, the well-known UFO researcher from Mexico, presented two corpses of alleged alien bodies. And ever since now, the entire UFO community is completely divided. And I think we need to talk about this, and we need to look at history too with regard to Jaime Maussan. Anyway, my opinion right out. I'm going to cut to the chase right now. I think that more research needs to be conducted. I am not on board with this at all at this point right now. I don't know what to make of it. These mummies that were presented, alleged extraterrestrial mummies, non-human entities. That's how they're shown. That's how they're being presented. That they contain 30% DNA that is unknown. My belief is that we need more people looking at this in order to come to a proper conclusion. However, I just want to put forward this is that the experience of the UFO community in the past with some things that Jaime Maussan has done should be a red flag. I mean, we need to really keep all of this in context. I know this is not going to be what a lot of people want to hear. I want to point out that I did receive several messages from different people last night and this morning, early this morning, pointing to the hands of one of these mummies that only had 3 fingers on it. And the same question was, does this remind you of anything? Of course, as everyone who listens to my podcast understands, I had an encounter with some sort of a being back in the 70s that only had 3 digits on its hand. And it was very strange. Of course, I've come to the conclusion that that thing was extraterrestrial. It was not a human being, whatever it was. And they point out, some of my followers have pointed out to me that, hey, does this not ring a bell? Does that look like what you saw? Yes and no. The thing that I saw was thicker, but that could, if this was something similar to what I saw when I was a kid, well, of course the digits it was thicker at the bottom, and it didn't come to exact points at the tips. It was almost points, and it was a smaller kind of hand than what this thing looked like here. But I don't. I don't know. I mean, we've heard there's all kinds of cases out there where people said the beings have 4 fingers, beings have 3 fingers. Who knows what being I came in contact with? Is this being that was presented yesterday in this UFO hearing in Mexico related to the being that I saw? I have no idea. I don't even know if these things are real. I just don't know. I don't know how anyone could sit back and say that right now that they are. And we're going to go through all of this. And as we do, I'll play some of the video from that conference so you could see what they were talking about there. Now, Jaime Maussan presented this. They carted out these 2 small caskets with these little short little beings, the mummified remains of these beings in there. Well, I really shouldn't say mummies. I should say just corpses, because they really weren't mummified, but they look like mummies. They had different scientific experts step forward to a podium and explain that this is not human and these are intact. And we looked at these. They said there was eggs in 3. There were 3 eggs in one of them, which is that's very strange. I never, who could have imagined something like that? But right now, the UFO community is completely at arms, and everyone's hollering and everyone's not being nice to each other over this. And again, I just think there needs to be other people that look at this. In fact, there was somebody I follow on Twitter, Tom Thompson. I thought he said it best today. He says, as it stands, I don't know if the bodies that were rolled out yesterday at the Congress of Mexico UFO hearing are legitimate. We need more information, and we need credible, open-minded scientists involved in answering that question. I am fully aware of certain participants and their connections to other debunks, so that's an obvious red flag. Until we know, we don't know. I couldn't agree with Tom more. I mean, there's a lot of red flags, but at the same time, I think that there needs to be more research to either prove or disprove that these are legitimately unknown creatures that have never been cataloged before in any scientific journal. So we need different people involved here to look at the evidence, to look at the DNA evidence and determine if these things are legitimate or not. However, I'm just going to read one of the articles here that was on this. This was from NPR today. It says here, a Mexican ufologist claims to show 2 alien corpses to Congress. It says Mexico's Congress heard testimony from experts who study extraterrestrials on Tuesday. Jaime Maussan, a self-described ufologist, brought 2 caskets into the congressional chambers. As Maussan spoke, 2 men uncovered the caskets to reveal 2 bodies. The corpses looked white and like stereotypical depictions of aliens. Big head, little body, 3 fingers. Maussan said they were found in Peru in 2017 and are estimated to be 1,000 years old. One of the bodies had been pregnant, he claimed. These are not mummies, he said. These are complete bodies that have not been manipulated. Speaking under oath, Maussan claimed the bodies were non-human. Maussan and others have presented similar claims about alleged alien remains in the past. Scientists have dismissed them as either ancient Peruvian mummies or manipulated mummies. During Tuesday's hearing, Jose de Jesus Zalce Benitez, a forensic expert and military doctor, walked the Congress through scans of the alleged alien bodies. He claimed the alleged aliens had big brains and big eyes, which allowed for a wide stereoscopic vision, and they lacked teeth, so they likely only drank and did not chew. The hearing also included remarks by Ryan Graves, executive director of the Americans for Safe Aerospace Organization, a former Navy fighter pilot. Graves was one of the 3 U.S. veterans who testified in front of a United States congressional subcommittee investigating the existence of UFOs in July. Mexico's Congress also was shown videos of Mexican pilots struggling to make sense of fast-moving flying objects before them. We are not alone, Maussan claimed. Now, I just want to point out that Ryan Graves has posted on Twitter today, and he's not too happy about what happened. He's not happy about that presentation of the mummies. Here's what he says. He says, after the United States congressional UFO hearing, I accepted an invitation to testify before the Mexican Congress, hoping to keep up the momentum of government interest in pilot experiences with UAP. Unfortunately, yesterday's demonstration was a huge step backward for this issue. My testimony centered on sharing my experience and the UAP reports I hear from commercial and military aircrew through his witness program. I will continue to raise awareness of UAP as an urgent matter of aerospace safety, national security, and science, but I am deeply disappointed by this substantiated stunt. So even Ryan Graves, who was at that hearing yesterday, is calling the revelation of these mummies as potential alien beings an unsubstantiated stunt. Now, I want to point out something here, too. This was something that I saw on Reddit today. It says, yesterday's meeting in Mexico was not an official congressional meeting like the one the United States had on July 26th. Furthermore, the swearing-in was symbolic and not official for those who believe otherwise. And this was posted by someone on Reddit named Ralphie de Musen. It says, let me offer you some truth here. I am bilingual. Spanish is my first language and am also fluent in English. Deputy Sergio Carlos Luna tells them to do a symbolic swearing in. So this hearing wasn't really official as you might think it was. It was a symbolic swearing in, as this is not an official congressional meeting. I have linked where this symbolic request is made. The panelists are not officially sworn in on a governmental capacity, but more as a gesture to indicate that they will be telling the truth. This means that there is no oversight to what is said, as there is no legal penalty for perjury. I have worked in government for over a decade, and this is not how these processes are conducted, here or in other countries. These details matter. This meeting was not the same as the one in the United States in late July, and I believe that the organizers acted in bad faith by bringing otherwise credible experiencers and witnesses to this meeting. So basically what some people are seeing here, that was most of this hearing was a lot of different credible witnesses and experiencers, and then they rolled out those 2 caskets and they opened them up, and a lot of people are having issues with that. Now, there was another article here that I want to read in the Huffington Post, and I'm going to translate it here. It says, aliens in front of elected officials from Mexico? No, these non-human corpses are not of extraterrestrial origin. These deformed mummies presented in Mexico by Jaime Maussan to politicians are a creation denounced years ago. So, this is something that the Huffington Post is claiming, that these mummies, this was already determined by people years ago, that these are not what they are being presented as. It says, small, elongated skull, gigantic orbs, straight as eye in their fossilized posture. The extraterrestrials presented to Mexican parliamentarians have everything to excite imaginations. 1,000 years old, found in an old mine, said UFO specialist or ufologist Jaime Maussan in front of politicians. A fascinating story that, at a time when the United States is downgrading many reports of encounters in the sky with unidentified flying objects, has reason to be credible, perhaps even tangible proof of existence of life elsewhere, except that nothing in these mummies is extraterrestrial, and this discovery is not one. It goes on to say here, now, of course, this is a translation of an article. This was originally written in Spanish, so it's not going, some of the words might not make sense, so just so you know that in advance. It says, streaming enthusiasts may have already noticed the mummies presented to Mexican parliamentarians bear a striking resemblance to the stars of a documentary with questionable methods, Unearthing Nazca, available in 2017 on the Gaia.com website, a platform specializing in pseudoscience, whose themes range from crop circles to Atlantis. Now available on Apple TV, the documentary introduced viewers to a number of mummies discovered in the famous city of Nazca, Peru. A slender humanoid with 3 fingers, a large prostrate figure, or a small individual straight as an eye with gigantic orbits were thus presented as possible fossilized corpses of extraterrestrials. Yes, it is indeed the same specimen, and it is also the same promoter behind the discovery, the Mexican Jaime Maussan, as reported by the site of Debunk, Snopes.com, which then presented him as a journalist. One of the mummies presented by Maussan, one of the stars of Gaia's documentary, then many books and audiovisual productions, a long 3-fingered humanoid, was appraised by an anthropologist. His conclusions are clear. The mummy in question is an assemblage of different mummified human remains. The elongated skull of another alien, simply the fruit of an ancient Peruvian custom. This says a lot about the credibility of the ufologist, but also more generally about the success of the mummies of Nazca with the general public. The exoticism and mystery of a civilization capable of producing the famous giant geoglyphs, which are not an invention, excite the lust of some as it takes away the critical spirit of the public. Basically, what they're claiming in this article here is that these mummies were constructed together. Again, I'm not saying this is true or not. I'm just pointing this out, that there are 2 sides to this story right now, and that's why we need more scientific investigation into it. However, again, this is not something that I'm not fully on board with it right now. I don't know what this. I don't know what to say about it other than it needs more investigation. That's all I could really say. But one thing I will point out is some of the history of Jaime Maussan. And that is, if you remember, 2015, there was pretty much the ufology, UFO community got a big black eye, and he was one of the reasons for that black eye. And that was with regard to the Roswell Slides. I just hope people have that in mind, and they remember it and never forget it, because I will never forget it. I was, at first, when I heard this story, of course, there was these slides that emerged, and that they were going to be, show that it was going to be proof that showed an alien body that was recovered from the Roswell crash in 1947 that was in a display case. That's how it was being promoted. And Jaime Maussan put on this big show in Mexico, charged people money to show up and come to it so he could present his evidence. However, it was determined that this whole mummy was just a mummy of a child. That's what it turned out to be. And even after that proof was presented to Maussan, he denied it. He said, it needs more investigation. No, there was no more investigation required. It was very clear. A lot of people got dragged down into this. In fact, some of the investigators, the Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey, they got dragged into this. Well, actually, they initially were brought into this by these people that discovered this slide of this image of this alleged Roswell alien. And because those guys have been researching this for years, and they were always hoping to finally come upon a smoking gun, and then they thought they found that smoking gun, but it turned out not to be the case. Now, they admitted defeat it came to a point where those two guys were like, well, this is obviously, we made a mistake. But Maussan was somebody that still denied it. And and in addition to that, he tried to turn it into a circus. In fact, he did turn it into a circus. He turned it into a circus by having this big event where people are getting charged money. To me, that's like Stephen Greer-esque. Charge people money to come and see this. See what I got to show you. I don't like that. I don't think anybody in the UFO community should appreciate any of that kind of stuff. I mean, instead of doing something like that and trying to make money off these things, I mean, if you think you have a great find that's going to show the world, hey, there's a presence here, there's an extraterrestrial presence here, instead of charging them money to see it, you should just present that evidence. No, don't charge them any money. It's too important. It's too important. Instead, they make it look like a circus sideshow. And that's the problem that I have with Jaime Maussan. I say Jaime, Jamie. I don't know which way you pronounce it. I think it's Jaime. Anyway, here was an article from The Guardian, and this was. It's called the title of it is "The Curious Case of the Alien in the Photo and the Mystery That Took Years to Solve." And I think we should go through this article so you have an understanding and be aware and basically know that there are some red flags here with what's going on with this stuff that happened in Mexico yesterday. Because if you're not aware, you should be aware. Anyway, it says here, in the spring of 2012, Chicago videographer Adam Dew received a mysterious phone call from his former business partner, Joseph Beeson. "I have something to show you," Beeson said with urgency in his voice. Later that day, Beeson showed Dew a series of slides. The slides had been found 14 years earlier by his sister, who had been hired to dispose of the belongings of an elderly woman who had recently died. His sister couldn't bring herself to jettison the collection, and so she took the box home, placed it on a shelf, and forgot about it. Many years later, she finally projected the slides onto her bedroom wall. She saw vivid color photographs of Dwight Eisenhower on what appeared to be a post-war victory train tour, pictures of Bing Crosby and Clark Gable, as well as several photos of European towns. Figuring they had some historical significance, she sent them to Beeson, who had worked in book publishing. Now, Dew scrolled through the slides. Some were stunning and had the unmistakable clarity of Kodachrome, Kodak's revolutionary mid-century color processing. He wondered how the person who took them was able to get so close to Eisenhower. This must be important, he thought. Then Beeson showed him another picture, the first of two nearly identical slides. These had not been in the tray, but tucked underneath, wrapped in parchment paper. Dew gasped. Staring at him was a small, brown, withered body inside what appeared to be a glass case. The figure had withered arms, shriveled legs, a large triangular skull with elongated eye sockets, and a tiny sliver of a mouth. He had but one thought. He was looking at a dead space alien. That was his thought. Oh, and let me tell you, when I first saw that slide, I thought it might be. I wasn't sure, but I thought it might be. I was thinking, oh God! I mean, when this started first coming to light, I was like, wow, this could be something. This might be finally the proof that we've been waiting for. Anyway, continuing here. Until that day, Dew had spent little time pondering UFOs. He's a stout father of three who shoots freelance sports videos for a living. People who describe him as a gruff, diligent, short on chit-chat, hardly the type to be chasing little green men. But he just couldn't stop thinking about the slides. I knew immediately it was a good story, Dew told me a few months ago as we sat outside a coffee shop in Frederick, Maryland. Whatever was on that slide was a great story. Dew had long dreamed of making a documentary, and suddenly he had the ultimate topic. He convinced Beeson, his friend, that they should research one together. The pair found out that the pictures were found in the garage of a woman named Hilda Blair Ray near Sedona, Arizona. Dew only knew of one UFO place, Roswell, New Mexico, just a state away. A UFO supposedly had crashed there in 1947, and many believed it to be one of America's biggest government cover-ups. It was actually a UFO. It didn't allegedly crash there. Anybody who's done the research on this would know that it did. The Air Force has been lying about it for a long time. I just want to point that out. Anyway, continuing here. News accounts and military documents all confirm a celestial device tumbled to Earth that night in Roswell, but this is where the stories divide. Witnesses and their relatives describe a destroyed flying saucer that broke into 2 wreckage fields. Aliens, many of those witnesses say, were found in the mangled craft and then transported to a top-secret site. The military, after first announcing a flying disc crash, quickly revised their story, saying it was actually an experimental weather balloon. I'm just going to stop there for a second. As we know, the experimental weather balloon was a lie. They changed that weather balloon story to make it a top secret mogul balloon years later. They lied again. They just told a different lie. They had to make the lie, they had to change the lie, because that's how you're able to easily fool mainstream media that way. They'll buy anything from the Pentagon. Anyway, continuing. For years, the Roswell incident was largely unknown outside New Mexico until 1978, when a Canadian nuclear physicist named Stanton Friedman met an Air Force officer who had been there. Intrigued by the man's story, Friedman researched the case and helped make a documentary called UFOs Are Real. Soon after the documentary's release, the town turned into an extraterrestrial mecca, giving birth to a culture of self-declared researchers yearning to find the truth about the event. Some of those, like Tom Carey, a retired Philadelphia businessman with a background in anthropology, and Don Schmidt, who owns a ranch in southern Wisconsin, have written several books on the subject, but so far their evidence is only anecdotal, and their years of research have not provided any physical proof aliens crashed at Roswell. If Roswell turns out to be true, it's the story of the millennium, Schmidt says. By 2012, time was running out on Roswell. With nothing tangible to link the accident to aliens, Roswell was becoming a cold case. Then Joseph Beeson contacted Tom Carey. Yes, by 2012, it was panic time for Roswell researchers, because everybody that could have been a witness were dying. There was hardly anybody left that you could turn to for you. They're trying. Schmidt and Carey, they talk about it in their books. Witness to Roswell, the ultimate cold case closed. They talk about how they were in a race with the Undertaker, because the witnesses were all dying. And now it seems that they are all dead. I don't think there are any witnesses left. Anyway, continuing here. At first, Carey was suspicious. He had been disappointed enough times by phony claims of Roswell evidence, and his first reaction was to distrust any new discovery. To make matters worse, Beeson also struck him as secretive, insisting that anyone who looked at the slides must first sign a non-disclosure agreement. Still, Carey felt an obligation to pursue any Roswell possibility, so he signed the non-disclosure, and in return he was emailed a scan of one slide. When Carey opened the email attachment in his Philadelphia area home office, he jolted in his seat. Clearly visible on the figure's head was a dark mark similar to other black blotches across the body's torso. It appeared to be some kind of skin discoloration, but to Carey, who has anthropology degrees from 2 different universities, that mark on the head was something else. Child of Earth, he said to himself. In the American Southwest lives a small reddish-brown insect called the Jerusalem cricket. It has a faint dark indentation on its head, almost like a newborn's still melding skull. The Jerusalem cricket's more common name is the potato bug, but in Spanish it is known as El Niño de la Tierra, the child of Earth. The daughter of Dan Dwyer, a Roswell firefighter in 1947, has said her father saw 3 of the aliens at the crash site. When pressed by his children to describe them, he had said, child of Earth. Those 3 words had haunted Carey for years. What did that mean? Carey assumed that it's something to do with the Jerusalem cricket, but how? Now the answer glowed upon his computer screen. For me, that was almost like a fingerprint, Carey says. When I saw that image and saw that marking on that body lying on the slab, it jumped right out at me. That's what Dan Dwyer was talking about. Also, the body looked exactly like what had been described to me by several eyewitnesses. Frail, big head, etc. My first thought was, this has to be one of the Roswell bodies. It wasn't a sketch, it was a photo, and it was taken right after recovery. Suddenly, Roswell had its most promising lead in years. What do you want to do of me? Beeson remembers Carey asking. I want you to help verify, Beeson replied. With Carey and Schmidt's guidance, Beeson and Dew began what UFO experts call an investigation. They took the slides to professors, color experts, and animators. They cut one of the images from its cardboard border to look for a date code. then had it run through a drum scan to improve clarity. A digital illustrator made a 3D image of what the body might look like alive. They consulted people at the Kodak headquarters in Rochester, New York. The experts told them the slides were real, had not been tampered with, and were from between 1945 and 1950, making it possible the photos were taken right after Roswell. They looked more into Hilda Blair Ray's life. She had a pilot's license and worked as an attorney. She was one of the first women to graduate from the University of Minnesota's law school and had married a geologist named Bernard. The couple moved to Midland, Texas. Bernard became head of the powerful West Texas Geological Society. They never had children. They roamed the world. Beeson and Dew started to suspect Hilda might have known Eisenhower's wife, Mamie. Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, Laura, once claimed the president actually met aliens while he was president. They wondered how deep Hilda and Bernard's connections went. Looking at a map, they realized Roswell, New Mexico is 250 miles from Midland, Texas. They thought that seemed close. You start to fill in the blanks, Dew says. Carrie took a photo of one of the slides to an old associate at the University of Toronto, Richard Doble, who noticed the figure had half as many ribs as a human, no collarbone, and its arms attached to the top ribs. The more you look at it, the more you realize it is not from Earth, Doble later said. But finding other opinions was challenging. Schmidt says American scientists hold up a cross like a vampire when the word extraterrestrial is used. He and Carrie also worried that any Roswell evidence taken to a U.S. college that received federal funding would be shipped to the military and disappear forever. Stop there for a second. Yeah, that is always a concern. A lot of times that kind of stuff happens. People send evidence to some college or institute that receives government funding and they never see it again. That has happened. Continuing here, it says Dew still wasn't sure he believed in UFOs, but he was starting to think the figure in the slides was something. The more he went around Roswell, the stranger people acted. Does the government know you have this? One woman asked. Several others told him to, quote, be safe. Soon, Dew grew paranoid. He worried powerful people were interested in his slides. He wondered why the same white van kept parking in front of his house. His wife thought his UFO pursuit was absurd and wanted nothing of it. Finally, he loaded a copy of the slides on his phone and went to Roswell. He showed the photos to the children of witnesses and filmed their responses. Then he tracked down Eleazar Benavides, an Air Force base veteran who claims to have seen the aliens when they were brought to the Roswell base. That's what I saw in 1947, Benavides said after looking at the slides. That was a chill-inducing moment for us, Dew says. Dew started to put together the trailer for his documentary, which gives a flavor of his truth-seeking efforts. By the fall of 2014, whispers trickled through the UFO community that Carrie and Schmidt had photographs of a Roswell alien. The world of UFO research can be a vicious one, filled with self-proclaimed researchers, certain they can find evidence others have not. You don't need to have an advanced degree to be a UFO researcher, says Kevin Randall, a UFO researcher himself, as well as an author, blogger, and radio host. In 10 minutes, you can say, I'm a UFO researcher, and start posting on internet message boards. Many of these, quote, investigators, end quote, turn on each other, and Carrie and Schmidt could hear the sniping about their slides. People wondered what they were hiding. They couldn't respond. They had signed a non-disclosure. Finally, Carrie couldn't hold back. While speaking at a UFO conference in November 2014 at Washington, D.C.'s American University, he blurted, "We have the smoking gun." He told the audience about Hilda and Bernard, about the Eisenhowers, about the slides in the box, and about the shriveled body in the pictures, and about the Toronto anthropologist who said the figure wasn't human. Within days, the entire UFO world knew about the alien in the slides, but since Beeson and Dew wouldn't show the slides publicly until they proved the body was an alien, the UFO community was flustered. Tom Carey had access to the smoking gun and he couldn't show it. Rather than hail Carey's proclamation, the message boards and chat rooms that make up the vast extraterrestrial internet buried it in scorn. Smells like BS, said one Reddit poster. Sasquatch community is rife with charlatans like this, said another. A carefully prepared scam, wrote a UFO blogger. Carrie and Schmidt were shocked. While accustomed to criticism for their research, they lived shielded from the modern internet's rage. Carrie couldn't comprehend someone calling him a hemorrhoid with glasses. Say it to my face, Schmidt wanted to scream to his invisible attackers. By early 2015, Beeson and Du knew they had no choice but to reveal the slides. The pressure to do so was extreme, and Du needed money to fund his documentary. Du spoke to a reality show producer, hoping to build a TV special around the slides, but the offer was too small. The only appealing proposal came from Jaime Maussan, an investigative journalist based in Mexico City. Depending on whom you talk to, Maussan is either a fearless crusader tackling environmental issues or a sensationalist with an unhealthy UFO obsession. Okay, let me just stop there for a second. Now, I remember first seeing Maussan long before this. I remember seeing him showing up in documentaries on TV in the 1990s. And, I mean, he presented a lot of very compelling footage that he had come across for his research. But this is when for me, all right, this whole story here is when, as far as I was concerned, Maussan had lost the plot completely. Anyway, continuing here, it says, Maussan wanted a great slide-revealing spectacle in Mexico City. He said attitudes about UFOs are more open than in the United States. He imagined renting the Auditorio Nacional, Mexico City's grandest theater. He said they could sell a live stream of the event around the world. He had a name for his extravaganza, Be Witness. He promised Beeson and Du enough money to fund a documentary. Beeson and Du hated the idea. It sounded like an overblown fiasco. But Maussan was their best option, so in early 2015 they signed an agreement for Be Witness and sent Maussan a scan of the slides. He took the scan to Mexico's National Forensic Institute, where researchers found 20 anomalies in the figure's body that they said made it different from a human's, including the extra large head, 4 sets of ribs instead of 10, the position of the eyes, and the fact that it lacked a pelvis. On May 5th, 2015, Cinco de Mayo, nearly 7,000 people paid between $20 and $86 to attend Be Witness. The show was more than 4 hours long. The list of speakers endless. In fact, let me just stop there. Yeah, there was a lot of UFO people in the UFO community, a lot of top researchers who got involved in this, and I know that I'm sure that they regretted it when it was all said and done, because this whole thing turned out to be a farce. But anyway, continuing here, it says, Carrie and Schmidt gave a PowerPoint presentation. Doble testified that the body was not human. The forensic scientists described the anomalies they discovered. Beeson found Be Witness too much of a spectacle to attend. Almost to prove his point, a person dressed as a giant alien strolled the stage. Yeah, he turned it into Maussan turned this thing into a circus, a money-making circus. Then Maussan projected the 2 slides onto enormous screens. At first, there was little response from the UFO world. Though the slides had been on huge screens in the auditorium, they weren't easy to see online. Many people noticed what appeared to be a reflection of a woman's leg and the corner of a bench in one photo. It looked suspiciously like something from a museum. No one could tell for sure. 3 days after Be Witness, someone involved in the show leaked a high-resolution scan of one slide to a group of skeptics. The next morning, Beeson called Du as he prepared to leave Mexico. The placard they could never read had been deciphered. And see, there was a little placard on it that they couldn't see. And now they could see it. And this was the story. This is where the story really... This is where the black eye comes from. A member of the Roswell Slides research group, posting under the screen name Leb Natur, examined the high-resolution image using Smart Deblur Pro, a software program easily found on the internet. Several hours later, the placard's top words had cleared enough to be deciphered. Mummified body of 2-year-old boy. Further deblurring revealed most of the placard's other writing. At the time of burial, the body was clothed in a, quote, it says unreadable, cotton shirt. Burial wrappings consisted of small cotton blankets. Loaned to Mr. Unreadable, San Francisco, California. Du was stunned. No way could they read in 2 days what it took us 3 years trying to decipher, he says. The deblurring had to be phony, he thought. See, this is the other part here. Now, these 2 guys, Beeson and Du, the ones who wanted to do the documentary and all that, they're to blame here, or just as much as I believe, along with Jaime Maussan. Now, I think Carrie and Schmidt got taken for a ride on this when they were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. And here, I mean, again, this whole thing never should have happened in the first place. It was, you take these slides, these slides should have been presented just on the internet at the time instead of trying to make money off these 2 slides the way they did. And you have some guy looking at a slide saying, oh, they're not human. That's not a human. How could you tell that if you don't have the body in front of you to tell? How could you tell that? Okay, anyway, continuing here. The Dew thought that the blurring had to be phony. For a few days, Carey and Schmidt, much like Dew, refused to believe the placard actually had been read. They accused the Roswell Slides research group of photoshopping the placard. Carey released a statement calling the members a cast of characters and accused one of being party to a UFO hoax years ago. I could imagine, you have to imagine if you're someone in Carey's position and you're going along with this all this time, and all of a sudden, you had access to this, you would have thought that somebody else could have put this on, could have examined this slide and figured out what that placard said. They had to know that there was the blurring programs out there. They could have done this themselves and avoided this embarrassment. Carey he just couldn't believe it. I'm certain of it. You go along with something like this for years, and the next thing it turns out, like right after it's released, you're shown like a couple days later, oh, this is from a museum. You can read the placard. But anyway, soon more information was unearthed. A better reading of the placard identified the mummy's donor as S.L. Palmer. Debunkers located government records showing Palmer discovered the body in 1896 near Montezuma Castle, a series of cave dwellings cut into the Arizona cliffs about 30 miles from the garage where Beeson's sister initially found the slides. The records included evidence that the child was Native American and photos of the burial site along with pictures of the body spread on blankets not long after its discovery. The mummy was traced to the Chapin Mesa Archaeological Museum in Mesa Verde, Colorado. The museum confirmed the child's body had been on display for years, which is where it seems an attorney and geologist named Hilda and Bernard might have snapped photos of it in the later 1940s. And that was how the story came to a crashing conclusion. And of course, after all of the fanfare created by the original 2 guys, Dew and Beeson, and then of course Maussan took it to another level to make money on it, and it was a total disaster. And then says here's the UFO world mocked Carey and Schmidt for not realizing their Roswell alien was a mummy in a museum. The whole investigation was amateurish, scoffs Kevin Randall, the UFO researcher and radio host. How could everyone not see the pictures clearly came from a museum? Did they really think that even if Dwight Eisenhower somehow knew the rays, he would let them look at something as top secret as a dead Roswell alien? Not long after the placard's deciphering, Carey was pulled from a prime speaking role at a top UFO conference. Humiliated, Carey and Schmidt apologized to the Roswell Slides debunkers. I came back to the States thinking the only redeeming thing is that 99% of the American press has no clue or idea about this or that it happened. Well, as Schmidt says. So Schmidt was actually happy in a way that the mainstream media didn't really pay much attention to this. So only people that pay attention to the UFO community were paying attention. But still, it was a black eye. No question about it. A big black eye. And now I'm not going to read the rest of this great article. This is a really, really well put together article. I mean, you got to give credit to the author here by Les Carpenter. What a great job. There's a lot more to it. But I'm going to switch over to a different article where it was where it talked about how Maussan reacted after all this happened. I said at first, Dew he wasn't even commenting at first. He went silent on Twitter. He was in shock too when this whole thing first down. But Maussan, one of the key this is an article from the Mirror. I'll leave a link for this one too. It says Maussan, one of the key organizers of the Bee Witness event, refused to concede defeat and said the saga was far from over. This could be true, he conceded when asked if the alien was actually a dead child, but there are so many anomalies that it is impossible that this is a human being. Although many people are calling the whole affair a hoax, UFO researcher and former Ministry of Defense investigator Nick Pope has a different explanation. This could be a terrible misunderstanding by people who dearly want to believe, he told Mirror Online. I know some of the people involved and they are not bad people or scammers. I see some of them as victims. Their reputations are in shreds because were arguably a little credulous. So there you go. Yeah. Jaime Maussan gave the UFO community a gigantic black eye in 2015 by turning the whole thing over that alleged alien body, Roswell alien body, into a circus, and it turned out to be a big giant bust. And the UFO community walked away with a big giant black eye. I didn't think I'll tell you what, after that incident happened, I didn't think the UFO community would ever recover. I mean, that really, as far as I'm concerned, the research that was done on Roswell shows there's no question in my mind that there was an extraterrestrial craft that crashed there. But that when that incident happened, that whole Roswell Slides thing happened, and the hoopla surrounding it, and it just looks so bad, and that's why I'm just throwing out this warning that Maussan is involved in this instance with these Nazca mummies that he's claiming are 100% or whatever he's saying, 99%. I'm not sure exactly. I think he might have said 100%, whatever. He's claiming that they're not human, that they're extraterrestrial. And we have other people saying otherwise, that these are fakes that are put together. We need to have some other scientists need to look at this. And I don't think anybody in the UFO community should be jumping to any conclusions and jumping up and down like, hey, we found something finally. Because you just can't. You just can't. When you consider one of the main people that are behind it, one of the main organizers of this hearing, which turned out not to be as official hearing as a lot of us were led to believe. And I mean, so I have some issues. But hey, I don't know. I think this needs to be looked at further. I think that for certain, I just think that some serious scientists need to be given access to these bodies so they could do some more DNA DNA testing and examination. And it needs to be Maussan or whoever's in charge of these bodies needs to let that happen. And apparently he's going to. So hopefully some people step up to the plate. If this turns out right that they are actually not human. Right, if scientists come to an agreement, then hey, I think that Maussan would be he should be forget about the past. Okay, we made a mistake about you this time. I see. I have trouble ever since 2015. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So that's where I'm at with this. That was a devastating event in 2015 for people in the UFO community. I'll never forget it. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. So I can't just go off and say, oh yeah, there's no question about it. No, there's lots of questions about it, and it needs more investigation, and that's where I stand on it. Anyway, I want to say thank you for joining me today. Until next time.